Okay, I'm going to start off the quick Q&A, and I want to refer back to probably one of the first things that you said that Screen Australia doesn't do, and that's you don't guarantee a job. And I also want to refer to a recent speech that you did at AIDC where you said that if your funding model or even your business relies majorly on federal and state funding, then you're not coming from a position of strength, or in most cases, logic, really. And you've also mentioned that funding this year is actually on the down and applications are on the up, which is obviously meaning probably less money for filmmakers or, you know, for difference in choices. Do you have any pearls of wisdom or suggestions about maybe some business models or some ways to approach projects, especially in regional areas, that might actually inspire some of the people in the audience here to consider?
Again, I guess it comes back to research. I would really strongly recommend, particularly one of the joys about the way technology works now is you can do a lot more communications with people online. Talk to people who are in a similar field to yourself internationally. How are they finding stuff? We have to be cognizant of the fact that every year there are more and more and more people trying to come in. And this year, for the first year, we took out almost all the funding cuts that we've had in the last 3 years. We've taken it out, with the exception, unfortunately, of some cuts in development and regional resource organisations. We haven't cut anything on screen. We took out 52% of our overhead. We lost half our staff in 3 years. Now, we haven't lost a single program yet or initiative. We haven't cut one. That's now unsustainable. I would be honest and say for some of you who've been dealing with us of late, you might have found my staff now a little harried or a little less responsive. We have cut too far. But we did it. We took out 48% of staff. Now, we've got to the point where we're now going to take out at least 6% out of on-screen funding in every area in this year we're going into. We are also looking at things that was in, for any of you who are around then, I understand in 2008, the board of Screen Australia decided to allow the offset and our equity investment to go into both projects. It wasn't designed for that. That was a reaction to the GFC. It's 9 years later and we're still doing it. So what people need to be doing is operating much more like they did in the UK, in Germany, in France, in Canada, where we help you to find other sources of funding. So particularly for those, anyone, the students here or people coming from a newer space, start off with that mindset because that will put you in a much better place, I think. And again, you've got to focus on the fact that the networks are going to have less money to put into drama and factual. The thing that works for them is things that you have to watch live, because that's why the advertisers still pay for them, which is why they've paid so much money for sport and reality telly. It isn't that it's cheap, because I know that's often in the paper, and again, the key producers in the room can tell you, doing things like MasterChef or My Kitchen Rules are not cheap. They're in fact more expensive than doing most stuff. But you have to watch it, so the next morning at work you know what's going on. So anyway, long-winded way of saying, collaborate, look internationally.
I think that's really interesting, and I think also platforms is really interesting. I know you mentioned Raka Raka and a few of the other ones that are actually really strong there, and I think there's probably a potential there to look down that and keep a track of what's going on now.
I would suggest that too, because again, if you're looking to produce or you're looking to do your own stuff, if I do look at the Mighty Car Mods, I mean, these boys, I don't know, how many people are aware of the Mighty Car Mods? The Raka Rakas? More. Veritasium? Because like Derek Muller, he is I want to say Canadian, but he lives in Australia for a long time. Now, the Mighty Car Mods, for ages, no one was working with them. Here and the boys are kind of unique, but what talent isn't? Discovery have now signed them up and are all over them. Veritasium obviously did something with Sonia, but I think he's got other stuff he's doing outside as well now. Nat Geo is all over him. Look at that talent and how you can get to them now while they're here and take them out. I had more calls from CAA, ICM, all the big studio, Hollywood guys, agents, about the catering ladies than anything else in 3.5 years of being here. Every single agent I knew from my time at Universal called me about the catering, which also shows, by the way, it's not just about boys in skinny jeans with beards. I mean, the catering ladies are both 30-something, they've both got kids. Literally, they were white hot in Hollywood, way before the ABC called me about them.
So moving from the business side of it onto, obviously, gender and cultural diversity are clearly priorities for the industry at the moment. And as part of the Gender Matters response, Screen Australia has now made a wording change to its assessment criteria. It was done a while ago now, including a reference to gender and cultural diversity of a team being considered when you're assessing funding applications. Mm-hmm. Can you talk us through what might have appeared to be kind of like a minor tweak to the assessment criteria, the way that has actually affected the way that Screen Australia makes its funding decisions now and the impact that it's having?
I think what's key to me about this too is because, I did a communications degree at UTS quite a long time ago, and I was, this good political student, which many of us are when we're students. And I can't believe I'm having the same conversation 30 years later. Mm. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Now, again, the reason I think it's ridiculous, and you'll all be shocked to know the only complaints I've got about this, the only ones, are from white, straight men over the age of 50. Literally. I feel so sorry for them. They've had such a hard time for the last 3,000 years. But it's like, again, what we're saying is we're not saying they have to get out of Dodge, because we're not. No. What we're saying is morally, but most important to me, creatively, culturally, and commercially, let's even the playing field. We had Gina Davis, I think this was streamed, we brought Gina Davis out recently, and she did a thing at the Opera House during the morning, and then really generously she did a thing which we hosted that evening with 100 people. And because she's got this great research institute, I mean, some of the examples she was giving were just horrifying about unconscious bias. So even the best people had no idea that they were doing it. You look at a show where even there is a female lead, and we've actually now looked at a couple of Australian ones, and the way it is edited, they literally show the male character's response while the female character is talking. Or as Gina Davis said, they'll show the pot plant before they show the female lead. And I thought she was joking. She's absolutely correct. It's extraordinary. Mm. Now, this is coming from shows, there's a couple at the moment, and they're not Imogen's, because it's the sort of thing that she's all over. But yeah, it's extraordinary. Imagine, because Imogen does Offspring as one of her shows. Now, you can't imagine obviously you want sometimes people's reaction shots, but, it's Asher we mostly want to see. We don't want to see the bloke over there. It's about Asher. That's why I'm watching the show. It's vital to me. Diversity is also vital. 48% of Australians now say they or their parents were born overseas. We, most people in this room, are new arrivals to this country anyway. There were First Nation people who've been here for 60, 80,000 years. Then all of us came, and then it's shifted again. Why don't we see that on screen? Rather than just owning the fish and chip shop. Why don't we see it behind the camera? I want those voices. I want interesting stories. I'm not excluding anyone. I really want that 55-year-old white straight bloke to feel welcome. But let's reflect the country we're in. Let's advance the country we're in. That's why we spend billions of dollars a year on screen content.
Mm. I think equality comes back to that saying of it's about inclusion, not exclusion. It's not excluding other people to elevate other people. It's about everyone just having the same opportunities and the same equal voices are being heard as well. I'm going to open up for a question. Is there anyone who wants to take a... Oh, Jamie Skip on Volts. Hit the... Hit. I will ask that you just grab the microphone because we are filming, just so that it does feed through. Makes Brett's life easier.
Thank you very much. My question is about balancing co-production opportunities with how you were talking about that there was a drive to be creating content for the Australian region, and how if there are co-production opportunities available to people, how they could potentially balance and meet that need.
Good question. Again, everything is about a balance. One of the things I didn't mention in there is, again, artistic and commercial. It needs to go together. Ideally, you tick every box. Doesn't happen all the time. At AIDC, sorry to rehash, but I talked about a guy called John Smithson, who I was really lucky enough to work with on a film we did called Touching the Void, which is a great documentary, but it was, again, an innovative documentary. It was the first one that actually had recreations and stuff in it. John also was one of the producers on Sherpa, a great documentary, again, we did last year. John also makes a series based in Dubai Airport, which is really funded by an airline and a government. Now that's great because that's how he funds his overhead. Now he does a good version of that show, but it's a pragmatic decision to do that, to do the other stuff. Co-pros can be the same. Now sometimes they're amazing. They're meant to balance up over time too. Something like Railway Man is great because on screen the main characters might have been British, but of course it was directed and written by an Australian. So I don't care, because to me Jonathan Duplitsky made an element of that being Australian enough, and it was still relevant enough to us. So with co-pros, what I don't like is trust me, finance really don't like, is when it's foreign people just using you to access a subsidy. If you do that, I can see Matt's left the room now, you might do that because that helps your business. You will take down the entire offset if there's too much of that. Because we are more generous than any country, even France, in offsets. The UK tax credit actually nets out at 17%. That's what you get into your hands. We're at 40 on film. So co-pros, be judicious. But they're an amazing opportunity.
Have we got another question? Lois, down here.
And the front row, the gentleman. Yeah.
Hi, Graeme. Thank you for being here today. I wanted to ask if you're able to tell us about the plans for the Enterprise program looking forward.
Yep. Again, as I say, something that I looked at when I was, I don't know where I was actually, 2008 when it came in. I guess I was in Thailand. He says glibly. I used to live in Thailand. Enterprise has been a game changer. The first time around it was about businesses. Second time around was mostly about people. I'm really looking about what we do in that space. I'm thinking, and we've said this, that maybe it would be about either just ideas or is it about diversity? And again, diversity, don't get me wrong, it's not pigeonholing. It could be regional. Could equally be one of our things that we would put into a diversity.
We'd be very happy about that.
Very.
I mean, it may be that. I mean, for example, on that, now thinking of partnerships. So we've just done this new one with News Limited. Some people got really upset about that, and I have no understanding why, because News Limited gave us money to do a new documentary initiative. What's wrong with that? People got upset that we did something with Google. They gave us money, and they took lots of our talent to America to train them up. Why don't I walk down the road and say to Michelle Guthrie, hey, why don't we both put in X dollars and do a regional thing? Why not? There you go.
Love that idea, especially regional drama.
And Lois, can you just pass the microphone? I think it's Michael, is it over there? I can't see behind my lectern.
Thank you, Graeme. That was a great lecture. In regional Australia, sometimes finding the right team to couple up with becomes so crucial and so challenging often. I'm wondering whether Screen Australia provides a matchmaking service. If people come to you with a great idea, do you put together a team with them or help them to put together a team? Is there any of that facilitation?
Not especially, and one of the reasons for that we don't is just because of the volume of stuff we get. And there's one of the things that actually I have to admit does drive me nuts about working in government, because I'd never done government before, is you have to treat everyone identically and equally. And of course we don't work in a business which is identical or equal. We one of the things we sort of unofficially do a little bit of it, but I think a key thing would be maybe to again work with some of our really great regional partners to help in that regard.
I think we have been doing more and more connecting with production companies, even if they're metropolitan based, and we've been actually using our career pathway programs that we've been using and a number of the programs that we've been doing. But I think it's also about coming to events like this and actually connecting and networking and collaborating and introducing yourselves as well, because that is the way that you actually build those things. If you don't know them, then you can't create those relationships.
On that though, because again, this is why it's useful to me too, by the way, to be here to hear these kind of things. If you were bringing something in, and if you said that from the get-go, that, you know, this is my project, this is where I've got to, this is why I think it's really worthwhile and good, and this is what I need, I think we'd look at that favourably. Because again, you're acknowledging, you know, I have no idea what it is, but let's say you want to do a TV drama. Being blunt, again, it isn't that we just favour the same companies, because in fact at the moment I think we have 10 or 11 different companies making TV drama, which is enormous. But the commissioners, if they've got a gap or they need something, they will call 5 or 6 people first. Again, she's in my sightline. Imogen will be one of the first people they'll call. She's got a track record. You may have a brilliant TV drama idea, but if they don't know you and you don't have a history with them, they're not going to give you $12 million and weeks of their schedule. They're just not. They will call Imogen, they will call the Fennesseys, they will call John Edwards first. You are better off trading away some of your beautiful project to get it made. Another example I had, Veronica knows this story. Nat Geo came to me ages ago, because I used to sit next to her at Channel 4, the one who runs Nat Geo Acquisitions. She was pitching that she wanted a particular show. And very few Australians, she put a call out, very few Australians took her up on it. They all said, oh no, we don't want to make that show, but here's the one I want to do. What? How daft is that? You piss off the main acquisition person for Nat Geo. She said lots of people didn't even return her calls because they didn't want to do the show. They didn't say anything. That's insane. Partnership is better than not working, not eating.
Yeah. And I think also, and I'm going to refer back to one of your other speeches as well, about where you said that you can't survive on passion projects alone. And it's coming back to that.
You can't eat your
passion versus business. Exactly. and I think you've also said in this day and age, you've got to think beyond Screen Australia and to think business.
You do.
What suggestions do you have about balancing, because I know there are so many passionate people in the regions that have passion projects.
Yep.
How do you balance
passion
that?
Project, well, I'm not even telling you not to do your passion project. Again, who was I telling this to? I was telling someone yesterday. I was at a meeting in Ballina, actually. When I first started in film sales, now film sales then was a very different world. The first projects I had to pitch were Barton Fink and Drop Dead Fred. 2 very different films, for those of you who've seen them. They were at script. I had to go out around the world and pitch it to distributors in each country to get enough of them to buy it, pre-buy it, off my pitch and reading a script. And the Coens weren't the Coens at that point. And the companies had to be strong enough that the producer could go to a bank and bank the contract and discount it with enough money to make it. Now, in effect, I and the producer were entering into that together. That's how we rolled. If you're making a film, you could be walking out with 40% offset, another 25%, 30% from Screen Australia, 10% from a state, 10% from a local distributor, and a reinvestment from a sound firm. Please don't send all the post houses bust, by the way. By doing that, you're walking out with 85% of your budget. If even you're going out with the offset, it's 40%. What about working with other distributors? What about working... who was another good example? We made a film called Spear, which is Bangarra, Stephen Page's first on-screen thing. I had no idea at the time that Bangarra are like our biggest cultural export. Places like Germany, they'll just do anything. Probably, and Rob Connolly, who produced that, who is a genius and writes, directs, produces, distributes, even he didn't know that he should have gone straight off to Germany and someone like RTL or someone would have given him serious money for that show. Now, he didn't, and he's really, really cluey, but he came to us, Film Vic. You have to think, imagine there is no money. What would I do? How will I do it? And then take us as a bonus.
Yep. Darius, your hand up there.
So those examples you're giving, Graeme, they're all kind of with an international context. Like, could you give us some more, like, particularly for us regionally, like, I'm really hearing you, you know, my projects tend to be driven pretty passion-based, and my rationale for that is, like, have a proof of concept, and then from that, you know, you can go on to do more interesting things and get more funding. But, you know, what are some, it doesn't even necessarily have to be regional, but it'd be great if it could be. What are some examples of companies that are doing things, or producers that are doing things that are, they're funding themselves through another model beyond the passion projects, the things that they're really, you know, wanting to get made?
And again, don't get me wrong, do your passion projects. Because I guess what I'm using is Spear, for example, is a great example. You can't get more culturally specific than Bangarra. You can't get more tricky. I don't know, has anyone seen Spear? Have you seen Spear?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing, but it's basically, it's using film as an art form. You know, it's not a traditional film. My view would be is if I'd gone back to my old days of working with Michael Winterbottom and those people, if I'd been working with Rob and Stephen Page now, I would be telling them, let's go to Germany. I know that the Getty is obsessed by this stuff. Can I get money from the Getty to put into this? And even not just cash, it's what else could they do with it down the line? There was an incredibly successful thing called Good Pitch, which was based in Sydney for 3 years, and sadly Ian Darling's put it on ice for a while. The most exciting thing about that wasn't even just the money which people were putting in. Now, we're in all 19 of those documentaries, but you had consortium of people who were going to get invested in getting that story out. That's amazing. We need to all think smarter to work with you to get your passion one done, because that's also the best ones normally. It shouldn't just be thinking, how do I get it made? I mean, again, at this Good Pitch thing, I'm sitting there watching people put in millions of dollars into these projects, which you think, there was some on the list I was going, God, no one's going to want to touch that. $2 million later.
Yeah.
Like $1 million into production and $1 million into outreach. It's like, those people are out there. Regional things. Stuff that I'm really excited about. We're talking, you know, we've got this show with the ABC we did called Rosehaven, set in Tassie, and it made a feature of the fact it's set in Tassie. Now, at the same time, we'd obviously done Line, we'd done Kettering. We've got the Nightingale, Jennifer Kingston film, which is starting now, but Rosehaven is quite clearly set there. That also makes a difference because that allows crew to live at home. It also means with the success of they're going again, Rosehaven, more cameras and equipment will stay there. You don't have to ship it from Melbourne. Yeah. That's my goal. If we could have a returning series here, it would change everything. Well, again,
do we have another
pitch to a drama person? Don't think necessarily, because again, with Rosehaven, Luke, I guess, was the big person proponent because he's from Tassie. He wanted to do that show in his head. He conceived it there. But, you know, Kevin White, who's the EP of that, obviously controls just about all the comedy talent in the country. He'd just done Please Like Me for 4 series. Don't think, I'm just going to do it here and everybody here is green. It's not going to happen. You need to get Imogen, John Edwards, the Fennessy, someone, or if it's lighter like that, Kevin, because that will open the door to Rick at the ABC, Rick Kalowski, is that his name? Yeah. You know, that's if it's light. But think strategically.
Another question? Let's, we'll head up over the back up there. We are going a little bit over time, but I think it's important to...
So my question is, again, it's regional.
Right.
So if you're a first-time filmmaker, sorry, I get nervous talking, and I'm wanting to do a community project, it's a feature film in a regional area, which is very remote. So we're trying to involve the community and get the local film industry up and running. So it's Broken Hill, notorious filmmaking destination, but the local industry isn't as large. Obviously, you have to bring a lot of resources in.
Yep.
So if you're, like you said, the high schooler and you're wanting to get, say, an A grader involved, like what is the best way to do that and how to access resources as an indie maker?
I think, again, it's what Ken was saying. This kind of thing is essential. The more networking you do, the more chat forums and stuff you get onto, because particularly if you're on Broken Hill, you can't just suddenly drive over and see someone.
Yep.
It's that kind of networking. It's looking at what the regional bits of, say, Screen New South Wales might be funding as well. It's looking when we do wildcard pitching, as we discussed.
Yep.
It is tough. You've got a double whammy. First time, low budget, and as regional as you can get in New
Yep.
South Wales. Doesn't mean it's impossible.
Yep.
Broken Hill is actually one of the first that Screenworks has actually started connecting with now, with Jason and the Regional
Yes.
Development Australia out there far west, and we've actually started doing a survey and we're working with them closely at the moment.
I'll
and
be there in
we're-
June as well. I'm collaborating with Jason, so
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Because we are trying to see how our organisation and the structure and the experience that we've actually got here might actually transfer, and Broken Hill's the first one that we're testing that out. So, you know, we're hoping that there will be stuff that will come out of that.
I'll give you another thing just to think about too. So think really laterally.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what the project is, but so how do you make the regional thing a positive? If I look at when Nelson Wass was doing Red Dog, the first one, he got Rio Tinto on board
yep.
because it was going to be in the Pilbara. Now that's amazing. You know, so, and then he got the local council to put in money, and then he got the royalties for regions thing of the West Australian government to invest in it, where
Yep.
they invest. You know what I mean? So think, you might not get us,
Mhm.
but there might be other people that you could go to. So think, almost don't think you're a screen sector. Think a little bit of a combination like you're doing an arts or community project,
Yep.
or I'm a startup business. If I'm making a lounge, what do I do? Who could I get to help me? Whereas if you were setting off a different business, you'd think, well, where will I go? What could I do? Who's a startup? Does Austrade do anything? Is my story going to appeal particularly to Japan?
Yeah.
It
And I
might.
thi- Another thing that there is, apart from beyond the Screen Australia and Screen New South Wales, there's a couple of different other avenues that we kind of talk about as well. There is the commercial side of thing, which is there are a number of businesses that are interested in actually supporting screen projects.
Yeah.
And you'll also find philanthropists as well who are just interested in, who would get passion behind a project and will want to make sure that it happens.
Go on to, is your thing, is it drama or is it factual? Is it...
It's a drama. It's a feature film, and I do have the backing of the council and the community of Broken Hill.
I mean, again, just going off what Ken said, I mean, one of the things that stunned me in Good Pitch were people who came out of the woodwork. An example would be, you know, we made a film which was in that clip called Holding the Man, based on a very famous novel about two gay boys in Melbourne, and became a very successful play. Just suddenly occurred to me, the family, huge philanthropists, and they own Canberra Airport. And at the moment, they're shaming all the politicians by putting up the rainbow stripes as every polly walks through Canberra, through their airport, because one of their sons is gay. Obvious people to go to on Holding the Man. Because if that point, if they're not even looking for a return necessarily, now don't screw them, if there is a back end they should get it, but they would have probably donated just because it was important to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who's interested in regional stuff? You will find there will be people. Someone invested in that Constance, a documentary made about an African woman who was moved to Wagga or somewhere. And there was someone who was, their philanthropy fund was actually about doing stuff regionally.
Yep.
Have a look on the Good Pitch website, because even again, that's doco. Doesn't hurt to send them an email.
Mm-hmm.
They can only say no.
Thank you.
We've probably got time for one more question, and we've got this person up here. We might do another question. Done here, Wendy.
Hi, Graeme. it's a question about content. So we came from that sort of old world feature doc background, and we've joined together to sort of innovate around digital content and digital storytelling. And we've been kind of working up ideas and pitching backwards and forwards to the ABC. Now, the thing that kind of seems a disconnect for us, I think, crucially at this, is the idea that between telling stories for or within the age group of the millennials, or being able to tell stories for everybody in that space. And I wondered if you've got some feedback on that.
A couple of quick things on that. Obviously, we've had our most successful last years ever for feature docs. It's back in vogue. You know, so Sherpa is the most successful non-IMAX. Well, Sherpa, that Sugar film, Eva Orner's film, which I can't remember what it's called, to my shame, which we're not even involved in. Embrace. Now, Embrace is fascinating. It started online. It was a digital thing that moved backwards the other way. Answering your other... So, feature docs are very, very popular, and because they've got a built-in audience, they know where they're going. Embrace started online. She then made a great film which expanded on the conversation she had begun about body image. It's now had like 1,000 dedicated screenings. But so there was that Sugar film. Now, even though it went out through Madman, through a major distributor, they moved it round like a band on tour. We've just done Kitty Green's film, Casting Jean Monnet, which totally skews the whole form and format of documentary. Netflix have bought the world on it. The world. Sherpa went out here via John Maynard in his own distribution, but Discovery took the world. 220 countries, same day and date. Now, for Jen, it was kind of a little odd to get her head around because it only had theatrical in this country. It went to a few festivals, but she recognised she had a political story to tell about the Sherpa people and how they're treated, got seen much more broadly than any film is ever going to get seen. Jumping around though, we did something called Motorkite Dreaming recently. There were 3 versions. There's a feature, which I think is going out through Madman. There's the ABC 50-something minute version. Then there is 12-minute versions, which Red Bull funded. Now, this is not the old school My Day, where you would just cut it down. It was conceived as 3 different things. Now, that's a big shift from what we would have done in the past. They went in knowing it's going to play with Red Bull in music festivals and to a young audience. Don't just snip it up. What is it that's going to be? So there's footage in those 12 minutes which isn't in the other ones. So think it through that way if you're going to play with it.
I think we're going to... I've been told that I have to wrap up, so I'm sorry about that. But I want to say a massive thank you to Graeme, and thank you for coming up here. I know how busy you are. I know how much you travel already, and I hope that you've enjoyed your time up here, and hopefully it won't be too long before we see you again. But please join me in welcoming and thanking Graeme Mason.